They say I might as well face the truth, but I am just too...
Hello and welcome to Game of Moans, a brand new podcast from the lovely people at the Double Down Podcast Network. For those of you that are new to our little corner of the internet, I am Chris Bolton, writer, director, now podcaster, and I'm joined, as I am on most of these podcasts, by my partner in podcasting, producer, writer and podcaster, and probably a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm sure he can tell you about, Mr. Mark Williams.
I get called a lot, but that's probably the nicest.
Yeah, I'm in a good mood tonight. I'm excited to be starting a new show. So, welcome for those of you that are new. For those of you who aren't, you've probably heard the genesis of this show happen over the last couple of weeks on our other podcasts. But look, if you're here and you listen to this, you either have an interest in Game of Thrones in that you've watched it, or maybe you're just curious about it and you're about to start watching it. Either way, this is going to be an episode by episode rewatch. We've called it Game of Moans because I think you'd have to be living under a rock to have bypassed the reaction to the final episode of Game of Thrones on the internet.
I don't think it's just the final episode. I think it's the final series in general. There was a great deal of dissatisfaction over. And we'll get to that when we get to season 8. We'll go into that in more detail. But I think largely it was unwarranted. I think a lot of what was said was quite disrespectful to the people who created the show and who were running the show. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a product that you don't have to watch, and if you choose to, then you can take what you get.
Having said all of that, I am going to spend the next 70-odd episodes pretty much ragging on this show.
Look, but, you know, as a viewer and a patron and a customer, that's your right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have a love-hate relationship with Game of Thrones, and that's kind of where the genesis, if you like, of this podcast came in. I don't believe that the problems that people have all of a sudden woken up and noticed were exclusive to season 8. I believe they've been there since very early on, and I certainly have been banging my drum about some of the issues with this show for a long time. However, having said that, I've tuned in every week to watch it. I've thoroughly enjoyed the journey. I, at times, absolutely love this show, but then at other times I absolutely fucking loathe it. And by the way, if you haven't noticed already, I do have a bit of a potty mouth, and so does Mark. So yeah, fair warning. There's going to be swearing here.
Yeah. Also, if you hadn't noticed on the episode guide on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from, there'll be a little E next to the title. That kind of gives it away. We swear a lot.
Yeah, a hell of a lot. But then I'm guessing...
Although that said, I don't think I actually have yet.
No, I think
Which is going to be some sort of record for me.
I think I popped our cherry, yeah. It's generally the other way around, I think, isn't it? But yeah.
Usually, yeah.
I think I dropped the first F-bomb. I mean, if you're watching the show, or if you plan to watch the show, then our language is going to be the last of your worries, to be honest. But yeah...
To be fair, it's kind of on a par.
Yeah. It's worth just mentioning that, yes, we've called it Game of Moans, and I hope that signifies that everything we are going to do here is fairly light-hearted. Just like on one of our other shows, Better Than Mario, you know, I do want to make clear from the outset here that I understand how horribly difficult it is to create entertainment, and especially to please people. So nothing is said here with any kind of malice. Mark and I are in a position where we're able to kind of see behind the wizard's curtain a little bit, because we've created, on a much lower budget, mind you, we have created this sort of thing ourselves. And, you know, therefore, sometimes you see problems. And there's a lot of them to see.
That's right. I mean, I've got to say that I came into the show quite late. I think season 3 was just about ending. We'd been living abroad and came back, and I visited a cousin who, just for the sake of his anonymity, I'll call Schmave, and he introduced me to a show, and he gave me some fairly iffy versions on a USB stick of the first couple of seasons.
Always the best way to watch a TV show, guys. Just for, you know, please do watch things illegally. Of course we
absolutely,
we encourage that.
That's the way to do it. No, I mean it was. I have since gone back and bought, so I feel slightly vindicated in this. But yeah, I mean, so I binged the first 3 seasons. I don't know, it was the first 4 seasons actually. I binged them in about 2 weeks. So yeah, and I mean, I came to the show and I don't have the baggage a lot of people had, where you'd have 10 episodes and you'd have to wait the best part of a year for another installment, and you couldn't wait to see what happened next. I just absolutely hammered through it in no time at all, and I'm a fan of the show. I mean, I came to. I'm not really a big fantasy dragons roleplay type of sort of person. We have a semi-regular game that we're involved in, but it's not really my bag. And so seeing the way this was marketed and the way it was advertised, wasn't really bothered, couldn't really care less. And so when I came to it, I was very pleasantly surprised. But I think part of it was the fact that I could just hammer through it in a very short space of time. Then getting into real time and having to watch it and having to wait like a schlub like everybody else, and especially having to wait a year and a half for the last series, that kind of fucked me off more than it should have. But as you said, I don't have a love-hate relationship with the show. I very much enjoyed this show, and so yes, okay, we are going to be criticising or critiquing in quite a lot of depth. It's not to say that we're going to be ragging on this show for the sake of ragging on it.
No, not at all. And as I say, I should be clear. I too would say I am a fan of this show. Certainly, film, TV, and game for that matter, and comics, just media in general, is something that frequently comes up in conversation amongst our friends group. And Game of Thrones has been a big topic of conversation for the last 8 years. Generally, I am the one ragging on it, and I do get quite irate as well. My background with the show, though, very much similar to yours. I was introduced to it by my wife, who was reading the books. I took one look at the thickness of those books, and like yourself, not being into high fantasy at all, just thought, no, fuck that. That's not for me. However, since it was on TV, I thought, okay, we'll give it a shot. That was, at that point, the first 2 seasons were out. So I binged through the first 2 seasons and then picked it up on an episodic basis from there. And thinking back now as we begin this rewatch, it'll be interesting for me to see whether the quality was genuinely better in those early seasons, as I seem to remember it being, or whether it was that I binged it, because having reflected on it slightly, I do feel like with the scope of this story, it is very easy to lose some of the kind of minutiae on a week-to-week basis. Whereas when you binge it, obviously you're able to follow characters and threads through a lot more easily. So maybe that had something to do with it as well. But yeah, in general, I love the show. I could not wait to watch it every week. I tuned in every week, and I kept coming back despite literally throwing things at the TV in some cases because I was so angry. I have never known another example of filmed entertainment that has made me as angry as this show, and on such a regular basis.
I think for me, the only one that did it is Walking Dead. I didn't have it with this show, but with certainly the last couple of series with Walking Dead, I've just given up because I had that same reaction. I thought, for fuck's sake, why have you done that? What are you doing that for? Really?
Yeah.
How did that happen? He should have already been dead. And I just lost patience with it. And I didn't have, and I've not met many people who've had that reaction with this show before. So yeah, it's quite interesting. And I think you're right. I think that there are lots of little details. And I've gone back. I had started anyway before we talked about doing the show. I'd started rewatching it from the beginning, just because it's finished. So why the fuck wouldn't I? No, now that it's all available, I can watch all 8 seasons in one go on streaming. So yeah, I thought I'll go back to the beginning. And there's so much in this first season that I'd forgotten about.
Me too. And we'll get onto that on an episodic basis. We do. It almost feels like a totally different show, but we'll get onto that shortly.
Yeah.
I just briefly want to jump up and down and throw my hat in the ring in defense of The Walking Dead. Save for the magic dumpster. I know. I think The Walking Dead has consistently been one of the best written and certainly best directed shows on TV. Whether it's to your personal taste or not, I guess is fair enough. I would absolutely hold it up as an example of everything that this show does wrong being done right, in my opinion. As I say, we'll jump on the reasons that I get so angry with the show as and when they crop up. And actually, I don't think there's going to be too many of them in the first season, because I certainly don't remember getting too angry in the first season. It's really once the bodies start dropping that I start to get wound up.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean the first couple of episodes, because they're setting up so much.
Yes, it's preamble.
yeah, there's not that much time. Well, there's not that much time to lose patience with it because there's always something going on. It's only once you start getting into, I think, so this probably halfway through the second and into the third season where they start getting a bit talky,
Hmm.
but not really saying anything. I think that's where the dip came for me. And obviously, it's interesting now, having got all the way to the end and now going back to the beginning, trying to pick up things that you will have overlooked. So there's so many things that you do overlook that you think, well, that's not important. That's never going to come up again.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, right. In season 7, that's going to happen.
yeah.
And you think, oh, right, okay, fuck. So I mean, it's interesting. And going back through it now, I think this is going to be quite fun.
There is a lot, especially in this first episode. There is a lot whereby I think if you're one of the people that had problems with the way the series ended, the it actually, for all that there was problems with that last season, and there definitely was huge problems. I really literally have never been so angry as I was at the end of episode 3 of this season. Um, but everybody's story really does tie up quite neatly, to be fair. And if you watch the first episode and then jump forward to the last episode, it does work, and you can see a lot of the characters' arcs being set up here, and they're actually set up quite well. We'll get into that as we can. I think this is probably a good point to just issue a blanket spoiler warning. Maybe we'll
Yeah,
put one on the show anyway. I think it would be good if we try and not throw forward too far. At the end of the day, we're trying to do an episode by episode rewatch, but obviously
yeah.
we are doing
Well,
it from.
to be
Go on.
that's to say, to be fair, if you've got this far into the show and you haven't realised there's going to be spoilers, what the fuck you think is going to happen?
Yeah, but you never know. There may be some people out there who are deciding to watch along with us, and if you are, say hello to us and offer us your thoughts. And if
Yeah,
you're not, offer us your thoughts. If you disagree with what I'm saying, which I'm sure you will, because I come across this whenever I bring Game of Thrones up in conversation generally, then please feel free to throw your hat in the ring. Let's keep it civil, but I'm willing to debate this with you. I am very much aware that I am in the minority, or at least was, until everybody else started
yeah.
seeing
Until about 10 weeks ago.
seeing the problems in season 8, which actually for me was a little bit satisfying, if I'm honest. I don't generally like to say I told you so, but there certainly was an element from me of, like, it's always been like this and you've argued against it. It's always been there, guys, and we'll point it out. But as I say, that's what that's where I'm coming from here, and that's why we've called the show Game of Moans. It's going to be lighthearted. We're going to point out the positive as well as the negative, But yeah, just expect me to highlight a lot of issues as we go through. Maybe you've noticed them yourselves. Maybe you haven't. I just hope I don't ruin this for you if you do love the show.
Yeah, no, it does run that risk of we'll start pointing things out, or one of us will point something out, and the other one of us or people listening will have gone, "Oh shit, yeah, I'd realised that," and then all of a sudden it's the only thing you see.
Yeah,
So sorry if that happens,
yeah. But at the end of the day,
but thanks for
if
listening.
you love a thing, then you do you. Carry on loving that thing and just look past the flaw.
Absolutely.
God knows I've watched some utter shit and love it. So you do
Yeah,
you.
listen to any of our other shows and you'll pick that up.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, yeah, I mean, we spent quarter of an hour talking about what this show's going to be. So I guess let's get into it. You don't want to hear us ramble all night about what we're planning to do. Let's get on with the show, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's just it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so episode 1 then, season 1, episode 1, called Winter is Coming. You'll hear that a lot. I think there was a drinking game in the first season that every time somebody said Winter is Coming, you had to do like 6 shots.
That's kind of tailed off now, isn't it? The winter is coming thing. By the end, it was like, have you forgot that winter's coming? I know spoilers. I know winter
yeah.
came, but still,
Yeah, but it was one of those. I think in the first episode it said like 30 times or something like that. It's literally any time Sean Bean is on the screen, you get it at least once. And so yeah, I mean they kind of set it up quite well. They set up what the show was going to be. Before I go into the details of the show, starts off where before you even have the credits, you get 7 minutes of members of the Night's Watch go north of the wall, and they find a murder scene. And then when they go back to it, the bodies aren't there anymore because they've risen from the dead, and they attack the Rangers.
yeah. Now this opening, I had forgotten about this opening, but as soon as I started watching it, when I first started binging the show, I was watching it on what was then Sky Plus, but not Sky Plus, which is like a DVR thing for those of you listening outside of the UK. But it was over the internet, and it was very early streaming technology, and it kept freezing specifically on a shot of one of the Night's Watch on a horse, and it just brought back these memories of like, oh yeah, I remember this, and then I remembered the scene, and I'm surprised I forgot it, because this is one of the best, I think, one of the best openings to a show I have ever seen. It's superb. It's so full of suspense.
It is and it isn't. The aesthetic of it, and especially the bit where they're coming through Castle Black and they're coming through the tunnel, and sort of before anyone opens their mouths, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But then, do you know the kid in The Simpsons, like the teenager who has all the shit jobs, like he works in Krusty Burger, he works at the movie theatre, has that really squeaky, annoying screech type voice.
Yeah.
The first thing, one of the first characters you meet who opens his mouth is, I can't remember his name, but he's one of the nice watchers, and he just reminded me of him because he was so fucking annoying. Yeah,
I mean, it's not so much.
Right up until that point, I was absolutely hooked because it looked beautiful.
Totally, I'm totally hooked. And then
as soon as he opened his mouth, I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, what am I doing?" And it was kind of like a bad English B movie, like
there's a lot of that in
movie.
This season. The budgetary restraints are clear. There is a lot of walking through glades and scenes by the side of little streams, just because we're on location, because it's cheaper than doing CGI. I guess marginally, but I think as an opening show, and bearing in mind I'm somebody that knew nothing about the books, hadn't read them. Like I say, it's sword and sorcery, not my thing. Give me spaceships and superheroes any day over sword and sorcery. So I had no kind of interest. So I had no idea what I was walking into. And then you get this superb suspenseful opening that like they really ratchet the tension all the way up, and it's shot like a fucking horror film. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And then all of a sudden, there's fucking zombies. So I'm like, okay, not what I expected at all, but I'm in. Like, it hooked me there and then. That was it. And then, weirdly, then, for this first season, like, you still get quite a lot of the White Walkers, I think, in the first season, or at least mention of them. But it became more of a kind of, and again, a little bit of a throw forward, so I won't go too much into detail, but it kind of becomes like a fantasy medieval murder mystery this first season. It's really like Ned Stark playing Sherlock for the majority of this season, and I'd forgotten how much I liked that and how much that was a thing that I enjoyed.
I don't want to say too much about Ned Stark, but I mean the way this, certainly the first season was marketed and this first episode was very much set up, this is Ned Stark's show.
Yes.
And you get his relationship with King Robert, and this he had they allude to this war that they had. They don't get into too much detail. You've got these they've got this the Lannister household, which nobody really likes. They're all a bunch of pricks, but they're kind of there because they know one of them married the king. And they really go to town in setting up this world, and you think, right, this is going to be the story for the next however many years it is. And then once it starts jumping around, you think, hang on, what's going on? Where the fuck are we? And all of a sudden you're in Pentos, which I'm assuming is France.
I don't know. I kind of these continents all get very confusing.
Well, I mean, I'm working on the theory that if the south of Westeros is relatively temperate, and then the north is cold and grim, so that would make it Britain, and then across the narrow sea is France or maybe northern Spain.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And it kind of looks like that sort of setting as well.
That would make sense. But yeah, just to go quickly back to that opening, I genuinely think it's top notch until we get a horrible fucking fade into the credits that completely ruins all atmosphere that has been built up. It's just disgraceful.
Again, it kind of smacks of that sort of old B-movie style that you used to get.
It really does. It really, really does. And it just pulls you straight out of the scene. Like, it's the end of the scene anyway, but at that point, like, you fucking had me. Like, I was in, and then you just pull me straight out of it. But anyway, it's into the credits, so you were going to be pulled out anyway.
Especially when the credits are like 40 minutes long.
yeah, then we come back from the credits, and lo and behold, we're in Winterfell, and this is where I mentioned without spoiling too much about the amount of things that are thrown forward into the finale.
Yeah.
Then, if you look at, for instance, Arya's story right from the start, the very first time we're introduced to her, she outshoots Bran from a distance.
Yeah.
She just completely Robin Hoods the motherfucker.
Yeah. Now, can I say at this point as well, I'm in a fairly large minority, I realise. From the very first episode, I thought Arya was a brilliant character, and I thought that there was a lot of mileage in there because she was the polar opposite of Sansa, who was getting all the attention, and I had it in mind that they were going to do something really impressive with her. Went a bit cold in the middle, but I think that largely, certainly across the evolution of the character, I think was absolutely fantastic up until the end of season 7.
I totally agree. I think you're right. I think there was a moment where we started getting into the House of Many Faces and stuff like that, where I was just like, oh my god, get on with it.
Well, I think that there was a lot of potential there. It just wasn't. They didn't
there
spend
was,
enough
but it
time
just
with it to be interesting.
Ever, yeah. It took. There was a lot of talk in there, and there was a lot of bullshit, and that's part of my problem with fantasy and high fantasy in general.
Yeah.
Is there is such an obsession on bullshit detail, and there was a lot of that. But yeah, a story kind of sagged in the middle there, and then obviously it came back up. I have zero issue with where her character went early on in season 8. I just have issue with the way certain things were handled, and I have very little issue actually with where her character ended up. However, I do have a huge issue with her turning her back on everything in the finale, but we'll come to that.
We'll get to that in about 4 years' time.
Yeah. So she's introduced well. We see Bran climbing around. Lovely bit of foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
In fact, he even gets told off for it. He is told, like, stop climbing or something.
Yeah.
You're going to hurt yourself or some sort of shit like that.
But even to a point where he's his mother makes him promise that he'll stop climbing, and he looks at his feet and then says, I promise. And she says, I know you know, but you always look at your feet when you're lying. And instead of giving him a clip, which is what any parent would have done, she tells him to run along and find his dad. Now, I'm sorry, if that'd been me, I'd have had the absolute shit kicked out of me for that.
Yeah, totally. Then we get, I mean, this is later on in the episode, but we're talking about the setup of these arcs now, so it seems like a logical place to kind of bring it in. When Benjen shows up and Jon is fighting, and he's sort of fighting a dummy, and Benjen's remarking on Jon's capability and how he's not quite ready for the wall yet, and all Jon wants to do with his life at this point, he's a young man about to set out on his journey, and all he wants to do is join the Night's Watch.
Well, that's it. I think that the problem is, and it has this medieval feel to it, but his entire life has been about not fitting in anywhere. It's about, you're a bastard, you don't belong at the Starks, you're not a Stark, you're Ned Stark's bastard. So all the time he's constantly reminded, and Tyrion comes at him just after Benjen leaves, and it's a very sage advice, is that, own what you are, because people will always try and use it against you. And over time that sort of comes through with Jon, that people, and getting to the end, that people will try and use what he is to their own advantage. But it's at this point you kind of see him see his other cogs turning, going, right, well, he's right, but I do belong at the wall because that's where bastards go. But you can belong there. That's somewhere where you can have a family, because it doesn't matter how you were born or what you've done. You're there, you have a brotherhood, and that's how you live. And that's kind of all he wants. And I think it's a very it's a very interesting,
very simple existence, essentially.
That's it.
Just acceptance.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, I mean, you look at the way that Theon is, certainly Theon is a twat the entire way through.
I keep notes as we go, okay? And I know people are all about his redemption and stuff like that. Look, no, I literally, my note that I've written here, Theon Greyjoy was, is, and always will be a complete cock.
Absolutely.
Worst character in the whole show. If I could reach through the screen and punch the motherfucker without breaking my TV, I would.
Well, that's it. And there was always this thing that he's always very snide, and I mean, it comes up later in the season, so I won't go into too much detail. But given the fact that he is effectively a kept slave,
yes,
of the Starks, The
Yeah.
fact that he sees fit because he is a legitimate child, despite the fact he's an indentured servant or whatever it is, he still feels superior to Jon Snow because Jon is not the legitimate child. He's a bastard, and I think that again it kind of speaks to where the character is, that Theon is always sniping, and he's always sniping everybody because, as you said, he's a twat. But
He's a coward as well, is what he
Yeah.
is. That's why he snipes.
Yeah, because he doesn't want. He wants people to think he's being strong. He wants people to think that he's important, he's clever, when in fact he's just a turd. But that kind of plays in as well because anytime that anybody does anything, especially when Jon does anything, that when he finds the last direwolf, it's the fact that it's the runt of the litter, or that would be yours because you're a bastard, and it's just these constant pot shots, and you can understand why the way it's set up. He would want this existence where he can just fuck off into the night and never be seen again.
Yeah, he's a cunt, and it's the dire wolves. Something I've got written down as well. I guess we're jumping around a little bit here, but just quickly, I guess we've seen Theon's setup there. Sansa's setup is given beautifully here as well. She's just fangirling over Joffrey,
Yes,
which sets her off on her journey. But to go back to the whole direwolf thing. Here's my there's very few issues that I have with this episode, to be fair. But then it's a pilot, so there's very little can go wrong at this stage. But this is one of the big issues I have. Like, we're talking about the head of House Stark here, Ned Stark.
yeah,
And it takes his illegitimate bastard child to remind him that direwolves are the sigil of his own house. Like, that is actual spoken dialogue.
yeah.
Like, what? Look, I understand that we're all new to this world and these characters need to give us information. There needs to be exposition here. But for fuck's sake, you don't have to be that clumsy.
Yeah, it was quite poor, and also the fact that there are 5 Stark children.
Yes.
So I'm sure he knows how many kids he's got.
Yeah, it's horrible. The dialogue in general in this episode is absolutely disgraceful. I mean, there's even a point where the Lannisters are arriving with the king, and they literally all get called out by name and position. It's like Lannister roll call.
Yeah,
It's horrible. It's so clumsy, and with a show that, I mean, that maybe they didn't know. Well, I'm sure they didn't know that they were going to get 8 years of it at this point, but they at least have a full season. You don't have to tell us everything straight away. It's okay. No. We can kind of work it out as we go.
You can, but
give the audience some credit.
There were certain things that you had to kind of, you had it very early on when we were in King's Landing before everybody came north to Winterfell. Cersei and Jaime were at the Septon, and they're looking over the body of Jon Arryn, and there's lots of talk about he knew about us. What if he told the king this and the other? And at some point, Cersei actually refers to him as little brother, just in case you hadn't realised that these two who were shamelessly flirting were actually brother and sister.
But and that's fine. I mean
that's fine. But then you get that later on where it's that's the queen's brother. Just in case you missed that scene 5 minutes ago.
Yes, and it is literally spoken out loud in that manner.
Yeah,
it's.
And again, one of the reasons that I liked Arya in the first episode is that she gives absolutely zero fucks. She has no social cues whatsoever. So
no,
as loud as she possibly can. Where's the imp? No, and knowing full well this is going to be a very disrespectful moniker that he's picked up, to a point where Cersei even says to Jaime, "Where is our little brother?" Again, introducing him as their brother. But then it's the fact that she's just shouting off to everybody else, "Shut the fuck up! You can't say that," and she just doesn't give a shit, which I think was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, there's also round about that point as well, just when they're getting ready for the Lannisters' arrival, is another one of these horrible pieces of dialogue, and also just I don't even know what they were thinking here. I guess they were thinking, Jesus Christ, it's expensive to keep puppies around or to shrink these puppies, but it's been, or at least it's in the kind of insinuation is that it's been maybe
It's
a
a
week,
month, isn't
a
it?
month or so since they
It
found the direwolves, and Catelyn's like, Christ, the direwolves grow fast or something. I'm like,
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible, and I think it's set up that it's a month because later on, Cersei says that they've been traveling for a month, and
I mean,
that's announced literally the next scene after they find the
again,
direwolves. So
did we
it's
need to
it's
even see the direwolf at that point? You could have left it for another couple of weeks, and then we'd have probably forgotten that they were tiny little pups. To be
well,
fair,
that's it. Because by the time you get in, I mean, even to the next episode, where where Arya's direwolf plays a pretty big part, um, it's not quite full grown, but it's not a puppy anymore.
no,
And but no, it kind of it's. I think that's the idea is it gives you a scale of time that it took them a month for Robert and the Lannisters to travel north. It's going to take about the same amount of time for everyone to travel south in the next episode. So they're trying to sell that. I think they're trying to sort of establish that to give a sense of scale of the country.
yeah, which they
But it's
completely throw out the window by the time we get to about season 4 or 5,
Yes.
and everybody can
Well, they all
just
have teleporting
magically appear
machines.
anywhere in hours.
Well, there is an element of that in this season as well, which I'll come to later on. It happens in King's Landing, but I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that later.
Yeah, and then while all this is going on as well, the boys are having to have some haircuts and shaves and stuff,
Yeah.
and they're all just stood around with their tops off for no reason whatsoever. And I had forgotten, like later on, I think the show kind of dialed back on the nudity and the gratuitous sex, and to be fair, a little bit on the violence as well. But bloody
I think
hell, these first few seasons are like they're on the edge of softcore porn.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've read, I think by the time they got to about season 3, season 4, when they were renegotiating contracts, because they were on shit money as well for the first couple of years, and I think it was Amelia Clark who sort of spearheaded the fact that actually, I have a character. I don't need to be naked all the time. You don't need to don't need to see me get fucked 8 ways from Sunday every week because my character is doing stuff. My character is important, and at that point they sort of said, actually, yeah, that's a fair point. We don't need the constant sex. Some of the characters will, people like Bronn, who we haven't met yet, but Tyrion's always in and out of brothels a couple of early seasons. You get it from those characters, but you don't necessarily need every character to be topless half the time.
No.
And I think the reason they had this scene where you've got Rob, Theon, and John getting shaved and not getting shorn and the haircuts and all the rest of it, it's just to counter the fact that not too long after this, you'll have Amelia Clark completely naked.
Before that, we cut to Tyrion's quarters, and it's tits and
Yes.
go-go.
Yes, it is.
It's and there's no need for it at all.
No.
Look, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's hard on the eye or anything like that, but it just serves no purpose. We could have got around that scene and insinuated all of that without knockers flying everywhere.
Well, that's it. And then
Just
I mean,
like the boys can have a shave without their tops off.
Well, yeah, that's it. And I mean, it's the fact that scene then becomes an orgy. It kind of belittles the characters because had this entire thing where Jamie is very serious all the way through, and he will carry on being serious for the next 8 seasons. But in this one scene, he's just a really happy-go-lucky guy who happens to get his brother a load of whores for no reason other than the fact that he'll be late for dinner.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I think I have the wrong brother.
The nudity is just out of fucking control. It really is. But look, it is what it is. It's certainly not. I'm not going to complain too much about it. I just it's totally gratuitous.
It is, but I think if it's the sort of thing that offends, then you're probably not really. It's not really the right show for you anyway.
No, there are far more offensive things. It's not the nudity itself that's offensive, it's how the nudity is framed. And to be fair, I guess at least in the case of Tyrion, there is a character argument to be made for he is somebody that drinks and whores.
Yes.
Yeah, when we come on to Dany later on, we'll talk about that then. Yeah, so again, we get some shitty dialogue as well, because you mentioned about Arya going missing, and we literally get the spoken line, "Where's Arya? Sansa, where's your sister?" If you haven't worked out that they're sisters yet, you're a little bit slow on the uptake, to say the least.
Yeah, that's right. And Sophie Turner actually does a really good, really convincing, petulant teenage shrug,
Yes.
which says, "I don't give two fucks. She's not here. I don't care."
Yeah.
And again, it's, I mean, I think they were sort of, I think she was sort of 12, 13 at the time, wasn't she? And she, the way she's portrayed in this episode, the way she sells this character, I think it's for the character, the way the character is set out. I think she gets it absolutely spot on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that one exchange with I can't remember if it's Ned or Kat who says, "Where's Arya?" and she just shrugs and turns away.
Yeah.
That to me, because yes, okay, no, some of her stuff later on is a bit shitty, but that sets her up perfectly for what she will go on to do later on, especially in the later series when she becomes a bit more important. That's for me, that's the very basis of her character. Before that, she's kind of simpering and kind of, I don't know, kind of insipid.
Yeah.
Especially in the scenes where she's in the classroom with Scepter and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't really give a shit already. I really don't care about this kid. And then all of a sudden he's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And, okay, right, okay. She's quite fun.
Yeah, her character's one of the most interesting ones for me, because as you say, Arya, we just kind of loved from the start. It's impossible not to, I think. But Sansa, you really grow into as the show progresses. She's
absolutely, yeah,
one of the more transformative characters, and it's interesting looking back and seeing when that character started, because she ends up so differently that you do forget.
You do, and you certainly do. If you were to go back from the end, so probably from all of season 7 and then through season 8, seeing where what she becomes, but then you sort of see where she actually came from.
Yeah,
it's really impressive. But there's some really interesting moments in this season. Certainly the last 2 episodes of the season, I think, where all of a sudden you see this sort of spiky, slightly witty, slightly more intelligent than she's given credit for character, and you think, all right, okay, that's interesting, because again, even in the space of 8 episodes, 10 episodes, she comes an awfully long way.
Yeah, she does. So she's one to watch, and she's actually, for the most part, my kind of ray of hope throughout this show. Generally, her, with some huge missteps, but not too many. Generally, her character is consistent, and her actions are consistent, and that's good. There are a few missteps, but they more happen around her than directly because of her.
Yeah, they kind of happen to her rather than because of her, don't they?
And we'll come on to them again in good time, trying very carefully to avoid spoilers. But then those of you that do know the show kind of, I think will know where I'm going.
Yes.
So yeah, we get that, and then we finally get the royals arriving, and Mark Addy just rolls in looking like fucking Father Christmas.
Yeah. After he's been stuck in the chimney.
Yeah, less regal and more festive, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that like the way that he's introduced, obviously, he comes in as part of a huge vanguard, and you get all the Hound comes in first with his imposing helmet, and you get the Kingsguard with their sort of very pointy.
Okay, look, I'm not leaving that sentence go.
Oh, fuck off!
I'm not leaving that go. The Hound and his imposing helmet.
Imposing in the sense of battle, where it looks like some sort of fucking animal.
Not helping.
It's just your dirty mind, obviously.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it is the mind it goes into. But bearing in mind we've just been talking about tits for the last couple of minutes, then it was
fuck off. We've been talking about tits for 15 years.
I took a step, and their conclusions were.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But yes, I mean, you had this impressive vanguard with all these soldiers and all these very imposing people, and then Jolly Green Giant gets out of his. He lumbers out of his off his horse, because he's this big fat bloke who looks a lot like Henry VIII. And everybody bows, and then he gives this little hand signal, so Ned gets up and everyone else gets up, and his first line is, "You got fat."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Hang on, you're the king, and yes, okay, it makes him seem jovial and approachable, and people will either endear him to people because let's be fair, he's probably going to have a coronary or something at some point.
It really does endear him, though, and it endears their relationship as well. Like I instantly like their relationship, and it's because of that start. I think they're just talking shit to each other.
The problem I had is that because of the setting, I wouldn't you would never expect a monarch to speak to anybody in that way.
No, I agree.
In a fun satirical. Whereas, but when they go into the crypt and they're having the conversation about before they have the conversation about Lyanna and about Ned becoming the Hand, then have a bit of banter, then have a bit of then shoot a bit of shit. But in front of hundreds of people, your first words to your lord and host should not be "you got fat," and then laugh and hug him.
No, but I mean, I think again that's part of the character as well, though, and it's certainly something, and it plays into Cersei's whole disgust with him. He is depending on your stance, he's either jolly and just busting Ned's balls and just a lovable oaf, or he's a disgusting fat disgrace of a monarch. And it just depends on which side of a
monarch, but not just a monarch, but a man. I think really, I mean, again later on, I mean, they allude to it very early on that he's off. What was it? Fucking boars and hunting whores.
Or is it the other way around?
Yeah, and they kind of set up very early that he's not a good husband. He's not a moral man. He's not a good king. He just happens to be the one on the throne. And his first interaction with anybody that we see, it's not serious, and it just again it gives that impression that he's not really a good king. He's not that good a man. He's just a bit of a pisshead who happens to be king. And there are lots of people who would feel the weight of it more, but would be better rulers. Ned Stark being one of them because of the way, because of his moral compass, because of the way what he's trying to instill to his children. The whole thing with Bran early on about the person who passes the scepter should be the one to swing the sword. It's not. It kind of gives you a bit of hope that that there is a bit of heart coming to this show, because at this stage it seems quite heavy-handed, but you think it's got to lead somewhere, and then obviously as we get to the end of the season and what happens there with some of the characters we've talked about already, you kind of think, oh right, okay, well this is a completely different show to the one they've sold us previously. But I don't know. I don't know. Rewatching it, I mean, having seen it in the first, let's say, good couple of years ago now, hadn't really paid much attention to it. But having started rewatching it again a couple of weeks ago before we talked about this, and then watching the first episode again today, I've kind of gone, you know what? I wouldn't follow this fucking idiot into battle. I wouldn't follow him into Greg's.
Well, no, there'd be
mainly
no
fucking food left.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't know. I like him. Look, I have issues with monarchy in general. I am not a royalist.
No shit.
Yeah. So I quite like the fact that the king's a bit of a fat drunkard who likes busting his mate's balls. I like him, and I will continue to like him throughout the season. To be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind him. So I think that sort of the way he was set up, it's not very kingly, and I guess that was the point. And I think that was probably the bit that bugged me. But in later episodes, there are things he does which really fuck me off because they are completely beyond character.
And therein lies one of the huge issues that I have continually with Game of Thrones is people acting out of character and also choices not having consequences. That will be a regular theme as we go through this podcast. Okay, so then we moving on. Then we jump across the sea and we're introduced to. We've already met Jon Snow. We already know that Jon wants to go to the Wall and join the Night's Watch. So we've met our first potential hero. I say potential because depending on your viewpoint, I guess this is the story of one of 4 people by the time you get to the end of the show. For me, Game of Thrones has always been Jon Snow's story, and this episode certainly, I would argue, this sets it up as such as well.
It does. I think that the problem with this first season in general is that it's so Stark heavy.
Yes.
That it kind of skews what could happen. So you get bits with Jon Snow, you get bits with the Lannisters, you get bits with the Targaryens, but not really enough to go on. And I think that later on they rely too much on people forgiving them for that.
Yeah, there is. This show in general relies far too much on a forgiving audience, and they've been allowed to get away with that because unfortunately there is this feeling that's been perpetuated towards it of, but I never saw that coming. yeah, maybe you didn't, but that's probably because it's
That
a
doesn't make it
fucking
good.
stupid idea. That's why you didn't see it coming. Because it's not right. It just doesn't make sense. It's not acceptable to just say, ah, yeah, but you'd never have guessed it. Well, no, I wouldn't
Yeah,
have. Because it doesn't make
yeah,
any logical sense whatsoever. You know, I'd never have guessed that I may be able to set my hair on fire tomorrow, but it could happen. Doesn't mean I'm going to like it. Um,
no, that's right.
you know, I've not got much of the fucking stuff left. Jesus.
I wasn't going near that.
Yeah, well. Um, so anyway, I'm off on a rant. I swore I wasn't going to rant this early on. I wasn't going to rant in this episode, but I've gone. I've gone. Right, okay, rein it in, Chris. Um, so we jump across the sea. We meet Daenerys and is it Viserys?
Viserys.
Yeah, her brother.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't really talked about the Lannisters yet. I guess that'll come towards the close of the episode now. But it's already been established that there's a thing going on with Jaime and Cersei. I don't care how wrong it's supposed to be. The shit between Daenerys and Viserys is far worse and far creepier than anything. At least with Jaime and Cersei, as wrong as it might be, you feel that there's genuine affection and tenderness there.
There is, and the fact that they seem relatively stable, whereas Viserys, I don't know if you've seen, it's the Blackadder Christmas special where they do Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And there's Blackadder's niece comes in the present day. She comes and she ends up stealing the turkey or the goose, and she has this simpering boyfriend who just does nothing but cackle in a really high pitched, shrieky voice.
Yeah.
That's what Viserys reminds me of. Partly because he looks like it, but because his character is just such a tosser.
He's a panto villain, is what he is.
Yes.
He is drawn in incredibly broad strokes, and just fucking a creepy pervert is all he is. It's it's horrible to watch. It really is horrible to watch.
It is, and I mean it's not as if they never revisit. I mean there's talk all the way through. Especially, actually, it's later in the series where they talk about keeping bloodlines pure. So you have this relationship between Cersei and Jaime, but the Targaryens did it for years to keep their dragon blood pure. They intermarried and they interbred. So it's not as if incest is a foreign concept in this world, or that it's particularly looked down on either. Nobody seems to give a shit.
No, it's just it's just creepy. It's horrible, and there is something. I know it's going to play into a character very heavily, and so she has to start from a place of weakness, but there is just something really distasteful about the way he makes Dany strip here.
Yes.
It's not pleasant to watch.
But it's not even as if it's for the good of what we're trying to do. It's you have to look good and you have to be clean on it because it will in marrying Khal Drogo, it will improve my chances. It's you do this because I told you to. Because if you don't, it'll piss me off. You wake up the dragon, and I'm going to fucking murder you. And this whole thing of him it's this very sort of passive aggressive threatening thing, and it's almost like she's like an abuse victim.
That's how it feels.
Whereby she's conditioned,
definitely.
almost like she's conditioned to fear him, even though she has no reason to fear him. It's just because of everything he's told her he will do to her.
Yes.
And has. It's not the best line, but certainly one of the most memorable of the episode, where she says she doesn't want to be Khal Drogo's queen, and he says that he will let all 40,000 Dothraki and their horses fuck her if it gets him his throne back.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well that kind of sets up immediately A, who he is, and B, the doormat that she is at this stage.
Yeah.
She has no agency whatsoever at this point. She's just there to get fucked.
Absolutely. And this is part of the reason. I mean, obviously this happens to her more and more as the show goes on. To begin with, in these early seasons, she gets a really rough ride, and it's one of the reasons I don't have a problem with her ultimate character arc towards the end of the show. I'm one of the few people I think that don't. Again, I have a problem with how it was handled, but it does make some logical sense that she would be unhinged.
It does, and there.
To say the least.
It's easy now. It's easy to look back and knowing where it goes, to look back and say, "All right, okay, well, yeah, there are signs of it. They have alluded to it in places." But I think a lot of it's sort of throwaway.
Yes.
That unless you know what to look for, you won't get it. The problem for me, I didn't mind how it went. The problem I had was the speed in which it was done.
Yes.
That her character just completely flipped on its head for like the 5th time in the show.
It was how it was handled. So,
But yeah, we'll get to that in like 4 years.
So yeah, we get more boobs. In fact, doesn't she? We get her ass as well, don't we?
Oh.
We get
Yes.
and then
I think we're just slightly north of the navel, aren't we? When she's
and then
on.
when we next see her for this kind of wedding scene, she's in this kind of sheer dress.
Yes.
And her boobs are basically on show again. Like there's no.
They are, and like she's there like coat hooks because clearly that really hot bath where, and again you get this really, you wouldn't notice it unless you knew what was coming later on, where she gets in this bath and she's not even flinched, and you can see all the steam coming off it, and somebody says, "Oh, that's too hot," and she doesn't respond.
Yeah.
And again, you don't. I mean, there are ways to read it. I mean, when I first saw this episode, I read it that it's a pain thing. It's how she responds to the fact that she's unhappy. She's doing this to herself in order to get some sort of control over. It's something she can control. But as you go into it later on, there's this whole thing with fire, and which again I don't want to get into and give away. But it's nice. It's nice seeding. They've set it up quite well for what will come in probably 7 or 8 episodes time.
Yeah, and I mean she gets given her dragon eggs as a wedding gift and everything. You know, again the seeds of the character are there. I just don't see the reason that her tits have to be on show here, to be honest.
No, and I think to be honest, a lot of it was the fact that we have a young actress who will do it. We're paying her bobbins for what the show will make, but for her it's probably a shitload of money. So yeah, get them out of.
Yeah, it's, as I said earlier,
and that was probably the extent of it.
It's basically softcore porn. It's
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And then we get to the actual wedding ceremony itself, and there's a live rape show. Lovely.
Yeah.
I can't.
But they're savages, and that's how they've justified it. They're savages.
Not only can I not defend it, I don't even want to talk about it. It's just disgraceful. I don't think there's any mileage to be had in even trying to joke about it. It's fucking disgraceful.
No, it is, and you don't. I mean, the Dothraki have been so set up as savages. They've talked about their warrior ethic, the thing with chopping off their the braids of their fallen enemies and stuff like that. That's all fine. That sets up the characters perfectly. You don't need this live sex show.
It's not just a live sex show. Like they're taking her by force. Right. It's rape.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, no, you don't need any of that. You don't need any of this wedding.
Not at all.
You don't need to see any of it. You've had the scene, let's say, where, as you say, you see her and she's practically on show again. He rides up to her on his horse, looks at her, and then fucks off. And no, that's kind of it. You don't need any more than that.
No, it's just wrong. Really is.
No, it's not even as if they need it to set up the fact that these characters, this race, the Dothraki, are savages. They've already done that by talking about their battle prowess and the fact that he's taken them on as an army to try and retake his throne.
Yeah, and you only need to listen to the language as well. Like he barks. Yeah. He sounds like fucking Jabba the Hutt when he talks.
It's to me it was a bit like Klingon.
Yeah, same sort of thing.
Especially
it's got a very harsh guttural tongue. It's clearly an aggressive sounding language. These are very clearly nomads or savages. You know, they're clearly somebody not to be fucked with. So
yeah, absolutely.
What? Yeah, we don't need a live rape show.
No.
Okay, but I guess somebody wanted it and they were footing the bill.
Well, yeah, unfortunately.
And like I said, in general, this first season and the second season, there's just nudity everywhere. And it was, I remember at the time, it was something that everybody was talking about. Oh, have you seen Game of Thrones? Oh, you got to watch it. There's tits everywhere. Yeah, more power to you if that's what floats your boat. That's all over the internet. So if that's all you want, stop dragging everyone else down with you, to be fair.
But not only that, let's be fair. The state the internet's in these days, you don't need to sit through 62 minutes of Game of Thrones to see tits.
You want to knock one off quickly? Just go to whatever it's called, RedTube or whatever. I'm pretending like I don't know. But look, you want to rub one out. Like, really, is Game of Thrones the place to do it? No, I think not. Especially here where there is actually a lot of setup and a lot of story beats being put into place for
it. There's a lot of work going on.
Don't be looking at the live rape show. Okay, so let's just move on because I don't want to fucking talk about it anymore. That's our introduction to Dany. She's somebody who will just give herself over to Khal Drogo.
Anybody.
and get her tits out for nothing.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, so moving on from that, we go back to Winterfell, and you get Robert in the crypt with Ned, and they introduce the storyline of Lyanna Stark, who's Ned's sister. Robert was in love with her, should have married her, and then she died, and then it's not explicit, but it comes out later on that that's basically the reason why they went to war with Mad King, and that's how Robert ended up on the throne. Again, it's late. Obviously, we see the importance is later on, but this whole the thing with Lyanna, it pops up once or twice in season 1, but then it kind of goes away for a good couple of years.
And this is where the binging of it all comes in, because by the time it had reared its head again, I had no fucking idea what it was about. No, and I eventually I cottoned on, but originally I was like, who the fuck's Lyanna? Oh yeah, okay, you know.
Yeah, because I remember I was on Facebook or somewhere and I saw the R plus L equals J thing. I was like, what the fuck is that about? And I read it and I still didn't know what the hell it was talking about.
It's like a bad fucking algebra lesson, isn't it? It's like what Game of Thrones theories are like fucking maths, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking ridiculous. But I was there going, I don't even know what that's about. I've seen it and I don't know what you're talking about. So I mean, it's because it's so thrown away. I think after about episode 8 of the season, you don't hear about her again for God knows how long.
No.
So probably till the end of season 5.
I mean, there's a lot of that as well, though. Like, by the time we see Benjen in this episode, and I think he might crop up. I'm watching this as I go, so I haven't watched forward in the season yet. I think we might see him once or maybe twice more.
I think you see him twice more, and then he disappears.
And then he's gone for like 4 or 5 years, to the point where he shows back up and has a big hero moment. And I was like, who the fuck is that?
And then you never see him again.
What? Who is that?
Well, that was it. And then you never see him again.
But I guess that's part of the problem of having this, as I said, this huge story to tell with all of these moving parts, and to have to tell it episodically. Whereas if you have the luxury of binging it, which you could do now, start to end, then it would probably make a lot more sense, and you'd remember these things.
That's right. And I think that was the problem I had, is that having binged the first 4 seasons, I think it was, and then having to watch the last 4 as they're on TV, you do forget so much, especially when you have such big gaps, because I say you only get 10 episodes, you get 10 movies effectively every season, apart from the last 2. So it's a lot to take in, a lot to remember, and then add that to the gap you get.
Yeah.
And it's just nigh on impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, we get the scene in the crypt. We get more discussions about bastards. Like, I've forgotten how liberally the term bastard is thrown about in this first season as well. Like, it feels like, I mean, that should be the drinking game. Besides winter is coming, like, you need to do a shot every time someone says bastard, because
true.
I swear they're having fun with it. Like, they know they can legitimately get away with it as not being a swear because they mean it in the actual sense of the word. But
although, to be fair, as you get further into the season and with particular characters especially, bastard isn't really a swear anyway. No, when you've got people dropping C-bombs everywhere.
Yeah, good point. But
which I don't have a problem with. But the fact it's used like a comma. I think is
I've used it
difficult
in this podcast already. I know I have.
Have you?
Yeah. I was fairly quiet about it, but yeah, I've.
I'm amazed I haven't. To be fair.
Cunt. Anyway, now I've definitely used it.
I was just going to do the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we sort of, the episode closes out then.
Well, no, there's a fairly important bit before it closes out. So you've got there are two important bits left with this episode. So you've got, after they've had all the shenanigans, and you have there's a banquet in honor of Robert and the royal family who are visiting. In which we see King Robert basically whoring around while the Queen watches. Move on from there, and you have, after this feast, you've got Ned is in bed with Kat, and they're talking about him going off to be the Hand, and then Kat gets a letter from her sister saying that John Arryn, who was the previous Hand of the King, was murdered. He didn't die of a fever; he was murdered. At which point, obviously, you set off in this whole Sherlock Stark thing, which comes up for the rest of the series.
Which is what I thought this show was going to be then,
Yes, I did too, actually. I thought it was going to be about who's killed him, why have they killed him, what are we going to find out? And again, that's kind of thrown away by the end of the season as well. So you have that, and that kind of sets up where the rest of the season is going, and then the ending then is
just before we get to the end of the episode, there is a lovely moment there, and it's probably it is my favorite moment of this episode. There's just this lovely, the start of this scene is about 30 seconds to a minute of just Ned and Kat in bed together, just being a married couple, where he's talking about going away, and she's like, I'm not going to let him. I think the dialogue is something like, he says, well, how are you going to stop him? And she says, well, I'm going to go to him and I'm going to say, listen, fat man, you can't take my husband away, or something to that effect. And it's just this lovely jovial scene of two people who are obviously very in love with each other, just fucking around. And it's lovely. It really, compared to all the horrible shit we've already seen, we've seen zombies,
and the horrible
beheadings,
shit we're going to have
rapes, everything. We've seen a hell of a lot of horrible stuff, and there's just this beautiful tender moment between these two characters. It's lovely.
It is, and you're right, and I think it sets up a particular sort of sense of they're the center of this show, so you have all these characters coming around, but they're going to be the anchor, they're going to be the nucleus of the show, and that's kind of where it's going to go over the next however many years it runs for. And then spoilers. Dun dun dun. So you're right. It's a lovely scene, and I think that it's probably it is probably the most enjoyable scene of the episode, just because it's so normal.
Yes, it is. It's lovely. It really is a lovely scene. But yeah, we're quickly out of that and on to more incest. Great, as Jamie takes his sister from behind.
Yes. Now this you watching this episode, you will never realize how important this scene is.
No.
And as we go forward, and you look at the characters as they develop through the years, this scene is absolutely pivotal, because if this doesn't happen, none of it fucking happens.
No, it really is key. Whereas the first time through, at least, this just feels like a way to establish Jamie as a cop. Yeah. There you go. I was gonna throw it out again, and then I changed tack halfway to go for cock, which was slightly less, but he's a cunt. Which up until this point he hasn't appeared to be. He's actually been quite charming, and
he is. And you get this very snide bit in the banquet where he approaches Ned, and there's an undertone between them.
Yes, but even so, it doesn't. He's not really sold as a villain in that. Even I don't think.
No, he's not, and he's very non-threatening. Yes. He's just a bit smug. And he always reminds me of in Shrek 2, we have Prince Charming.
Yes.
He is that character. He's a smug little twat you want to punch in the face.
Yeah, I don't even get that from him. Full disclosure, even at this early stage, and even after he pushes Bran out the window. There you go. Spoilers. We were coming to it anyway. Even at this early stage, one of my absolute favourite characters in the show. Love him. I absolutely love the guy, and I love his story. He really got fucked over at the end.
We'll come to that. His end was terrible.
Just a charming motherfucker. An absolutely charming motherfucker.
But you come to it and say he has this sort of smugness, this arrogance to him, which it suits the character, and he portrays it beautifully. But it's just even the way he looks with the floppy blonde hair and the golden armor. He looks like Prince Charming from Shrek. Yeah. And you do want to punch him, but that's the way he's set, the way he's portrayed it, and it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
But you have this thing. So Bran climbs up an abandoned tower. He gets to the top, and he finds Jamie giving his sister one. So she panics. He's going to tell the king. He saw us, all the rest of it. Jamie brings him in, puts an arm around him. Bloody hell, you climbed a long way. How did you get all the way up here? He makes him feel comfortable. And then with the biggest shit-eating grin you've ever seen, just shoves him out the window and lets him fall.
It's great.
Doesn't even look back. He doesn't even watch him fall.
Such a good scene.
Beautiful.
Yeah, such a good scene.
It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And his delivery as well. The things I do for love. It's great.
And then he goes back to presumably give her another one. And it's so important because you don't then see the result of that for another 7.5 years.
No. But one thing I have made a note of here, it is, as you say, it's a very good scene. It's a very important scene. But I guess you don't think about this the first time you're watching it through, because it is actually quite shocking. You're not expecting that to happen, especially because Jamie's been portrayed as so charming up until this point. But what...
And nobody hurts kids in TV either.
But sort of looking back on it now and knowing where things go and knowing having a little bit of foresight with these characters. Like, I'm confused as to, does he push him because they're afraid they're going to get found out? Because it's common knowledge that they're fucking each other. Like, nobody flat out says it, but everybody knows. It's one of those things that, like, everyone knows.
It's the thing, but they set it up very early on. So when you have the first scene where they're at John Aaron's, where he's laying in state or wherever, where they're by his body, there's a thing of, if the king knew, our heads would be on spikes. So they don't care if anybody else knows because they can just deny it. But if the king knows, they'll be killed. And the fact that they're in in House Stark and all the rest of it, it's very important that the king doesn't find out. So it's a case of, we're not in our world anymore. We're not in King's Landing where we can hide away and all the rest of it. We're in Winterfell where all eyes are on us because we're guests and we're very visible and we're very prominent. And you're the queen, for fuck's sake. So
I guess, but I still just feel like everyone knows. Like, the king probably
they didn't at this
knows.
stage, did they? I mean, they didn't. I mean, that was the whole thing. And as we get into the Sherlock Stark bit, that's one of the key things that nobody seems to realise.
In that case, I had forgotten.
Time.
That. As I say, I'm rewatching as we go, so I'd forgotten this was a big revelation. Then, I just sort of think back that it's almost hurled at the two of them like an insult at some points during the show. So I assumed that it was common knowledge. So okay, then in that case, that explains that. I'm just thinking really 2 steps ahead.
It's only really Tyrion who mentions it in this episode.
Which
or he implies it, doesn't he? So yes, I mean that's the reason for throwing him out the window. It's, I said they don't want the king to find out because the king will kill them. Because for all the fucking right the king does, that's still his wife, that's still his queen, and that's mine. Hands off. The fact that he doesn't want her is neither here nor there.
No. Okay, well in that case then, fine. I'll take it.
I'm glad you approve.
No, fine. I was watching it and thinking forward, and I was like, well, is he just doing this because he's a prick, or is he doing this because they're worried about people finding out? In which case,
it's a bit of both. Really,
because if it was they were worried about people finding out, I was like, this is a bit redundant because everybody knows. But then I'm misremembering in that case.
I think this is the problem. So there's a whole thing of a library book or a book from the whatchamacallit, from what is effectively a library, which John Aaron had out, and then Ned Stark gets out, and they come to the same realization. It's this whole thing that you're not supposed to put 2 and 2 together yet.
Okay, in which case, maybe don't show it to us.
Well, yeah.
I don't know, just a thought. But then I guess we need to get to pushing Bran out the window. But...
Well, yeah, because that's kind of important. Even for this early part of the first season, it's important that his journey starts.
Yeah. Also, another character who is always an annoying prick.
Yes.
I'm not saying I took pleasure in seeing him get pushed out of a window, but
I wasn't overly concerned. I got to be honest. Yeah.
Not about the fucking the sister thing. That's obviously wrong. But pushing the annoying squirt out the window, yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there.
And so then we get credits with nary another mention of a White Walker. We see them in the opening, and we hear them discussed at the beat
and dismissed.
And dismissed. Yeah. And this will be another of my recurring problems throughout the show. As I say, Jon has always felt like the hero to me, and the real story, and they even set it up by showing them in the first scene. The real story here has always felt like it's the story of the fight against the White Walkers and somebody having to unite the kingdoms so that man can stand united. And then the political machinations and stuff are hurdles that get in the way of that. That becomes very muddy as the show goes on, to the point where you barely see the White Walkers in the latter seasons.
And I mean, obviously they've announced a prequel show that's coming in the next couple of years, and there've been some. There's a press release this week talking about what it's going to entail and the origin of the White Walkers, stuff like that. Rather than that, I would much rather, because you have the origin of the White Walkers in season 6 of Game of Thrones. So rather than that, what I want to see is the Night's Watch.
Definitely.
fighting against the
Yes.
White Walkers, them having their history with them.
That's
a show I want to see,
the
because you can
show
build
we
characters,
were
you can build up a
promised
brother.
from the start, from the first scene.
Yeah,
That's
you-
the show we were promised
Well,
that we
that's-
never
that's
get, and that's annoying.
That's it, and you can build this brotherhood. You can build these characters that you will take it to your heart, that you will really engage with, and then one of them will die
Yeah.
horribly, because that's how TV works. That's what we were promised. I think that's what, having now seen where Game of Thrones goes, and the fact they started talking about this spin-off prequel, that's the show I wanted,
Yes.
and that's the show I'm not going to get again.
And they fucked that royally. They really did fuck that royally this season.
Yes.
But there you go. That's for 4 years' time or whatever. It'll come up before then, because I'm so fucking angry about it. I'm not going to be able to contain myself for 4 years.
Well, maybe by the time we get to that, if we get to the last season, you'll calm down a bit.
No, I really won't have. If anything, it'll just open an old wound.
Well, yeah, because you have to go back and watch it again.
If I hadn't have already invested like 6 or 7 years in the show, I would have stopped watching after episode 3 of season 8, because I was done. I was out. That was the last straw. I did see it through to the end. I'm glad I did, because they kind of won me back around a little, if I'm honest, but only very slightly. I think part of the reason I wasn't so affected by the finale as everyone else is because I had given up hope by that point. So, like, my expectations were so low, so low, that they had to surpass them, essentially.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, and I think that we'll get to that. But I mean, certainly for a first episode, I mean, I've enjoyed rewatching. I've not
thoroughly enjoyed it.
There are issues that we've come up with a few
They're
things.
fairly slight, though. For a podcast called Game of Moans, we haven't moaned much this episode.
Not about this episode, anyway.
This has actually been a pretty good episode. My summation that I've written here, overall, not bad. Good opening all around. Some awful dialogue and some ropey performances in places as well. But hey, everybody's still learning here.
Yeah, and there's lots of boobs, so you know. Hey.
It's way too much gratuitous nudity. That's my closing line here. Way too much.
Yeah. But if that's what you're into, then you know this is a good place to start.
Yeah. But if that's what you're into, I can't honestly recommend that you go and buy a box set of Game of Thrones.
No, go and watch some porn.
Yeah, go get something for free off the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so that's episode 1. That's Winter's Coming. Yeah, so we've said it about 50 times, so that's about 50 shots I owe somebody.
Plus Bastard as well, yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, I'm fairly sure we'll divide opinion on this. There are some people who are absolute diehards for the show. It's the best thing ever. It's perfect and nothing can be wrong with it. There are some people who absolutely hated it from the off and didn't stick with it. And there are some people who liked it in secret but actually railed against it on the internet, because that's what the internet's for. But either way, we'd love to get people's thoughts on it. There's some stuff I haven't really covered, particularly on the character of Joffrey, because I'll get into that in the next couple of episodes. Just the way that he's sold and the way they set him up. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear people's thoughts. You can get in touch with us via our website, ddpodcast.net, on Facebook with the Double M Podcast Network, on Twitter we're at ddpodcastnet. Yeah, get in touch, let us know what you think. Try and keep it clean, try and keep the abuse to a minimum, unless it's aimed at Chris. But yeah, until next time.
Game over.